The story of TISA is extraordinary. It spans 50 years, from the early days of independence to today, where our organization has over 62,000 members and 17 branches nationwide. The TISA story is closely intertwined with the aspirations of our country, moving from self-government to independence. The success of TISA shows how Papua New Guineans have the potential to build an enterprise, sustain it and develop it. To commemorate TISA's 50th anniversary, this story is being told through the eyes and personal experiences of some leading Papua New Guineans. This story of service will continue for another 50 years. Chapter 1, A Journey Begins. The TISA story begins as our country moved towards independence. At this time, PNG's savings and loans movement was growing.
The Reserve Bank of Australia, which had a feature in Papua New Guinea in the financial system, had a branch here in Port Moresby. They started the rollout of the savings and loans movement in the 60s, early 60s. I think this savings and loans ordinance put out in 1961 that started the ball rolling in the savings and loans movement. Mostly going out to the rural areas where there are savings clubs and savings and loan societies. This started, and it was predominantly a rural setting until about the 70s, what we were talking about. As you were saying, in the 60s, I was just a student. My father was a teacher, so at some stage he mentioned that PNGTA Savings and Loan Society. So it got stuck in my mind that there's a finance company somewhere, but it didn't dawn on me that one day I'd be a registrar.
Chapter 2, A Noble Profession. TISA in Tok Pisin means teacher. It's a fitting name for our organization, given its mission in the early years was to serve our nation's teachers. Michael Coyson recalls hearing inspiring stories of teachers in the early years of nationhood.
Listening to a man like William Bamari, who served this country all his career as a young teacher before independence, the places that he went to, the things that he did, him and his colleagues, what they did.
TISA has always served PNG's teachers wherever help was needed.
I remember when I was younger and in the early days, we used to go out recruiting because the savings and loan societies didn't have enough members to become sustainable. So we used to go out sleep in the community schools. Yeah. Places like Bogia, Karkar Island, go to Watam, places like that. You sleep in community schools because there's no hotel accommodation, right?
In the early years, the Teachers Savings and Loan Society had 3,000 members with a 2 million kina turnover. Chapter 3, A New Culture. From 1972 to 1979, TISA faced the teething problems common to Savings and Loan Society at the time.
TISA was under administration. They put it under statutory management. And the governor at the time was Sir Wilson Cummit. Koyari Tarata. Sir Wilson Cummit was deputy governor. And they stepped in a sector board, all of management. And Deloitte Touche Tomatsu administered the society for about 2 years.
In 2002, Michael Coyson was appointed CEO to run TISA. It had been under administration for 2 years. Amongst the first steps he took was to seek a deeper understanding from members and on how to serve them better.
I went to the in-service training college, Teachers In-Service Training College, because there you get all of the teachers from all over the country. They come in for training courses. I spent time sitting down with them and talking to them. And they told me what they were wanting from their society. So I came back and made the changes. Opened 17 branches throughout the country. Used the dividends from BSP and Credit Corp to pump it back to the members in terms of products, services, convenience, affordability. Give back to them.
Chapter 4, New Beginnings. With a new CEO came a new vision to make TISA services more accessible to members. Meanwhile, stability on the board steered long-term value for shareholders.
Just one word, trust. The defining relationship between shareholders and the board is trust. And the defining relationship between boards and the groups or the CEO is trust. Everything else falls underneath that.
Now the board looked to offer membership to other public servants.
And we're in Balimo in 2008. And there was a teacher who was a mother who was retiring from teaching service, and she wanted her children to continue, but they were not in the public service or teaching, they were in the private sector. So she asked the question, I want my kids to continue, but how do they do that?
Mr. Khoisan recalled that this was the first of 2 questions asked by this retiring teacher. The second showed a desire amongst members for banking services. This was a time of big decisions for the board.
So when are you going to start a bank of our own? We want a bank of our own. I said, all right. So from the discussion just grew.
Chapter 5, Growth and Diversity. Sir Wilson Cummett, who was an integral part of TISA's growth in the early years, sees a great future in store for TISA.
Still, the Seven Syllables movement is such that in some countries, some older European countries, Seven Syllables movements have seen the rise of big banks. They grew into finance companies, into big banks. So that's a transition that can take place. So we look forward to this particular movement continuing to that next phase of development in the financial system.
TISA is on its way to doing the same. While the decisions to demutualize and for TISA to have its own bank have been 2 of the most challenging decisions the board has had to make, William Varmari says the future is bright.
There are people around who are ready to give a hand, to help. And there are leaders also to give a hand at their level. So we are not alone. We believe that there are good people around who are waiting to help us, because we want to help also them. We will all help each other. Overall, everybody is excited about TISA savings and loans going into a bank. At the end of the day. But there are so many things that we have to do first, then properly.
And this is TISA's story so far. It's a story that runs as a common thread through the lives of generations of Papua New Guineans. Not for profit, not for charity, but for service.